Hey guys, my guest tonight is Zaysan Saldausky. Has a unique story to tell about an alien encounter and the abductions that followed. See you in about 5 minutes. Grab your popcorn and snacks. Find a comfy spot, take a seat or lie down, and let me transport you to a place of fantasy, ghost stories, ancient legends, odd creatures, alien encounters, and other magical topics. You may even decide to join the conversation. From faraway lands to your own backyard, with a small dash of pixie dust. Turn out the lights and open your minds. The journey is about to begin. Hey everyone, how you guys doing? See, Mercury retrograde starts again. The stupid video started again. How is everyone today? I hope you said great. It's hot here, but it's always hot here. You know, we had a couple of days where it was nice. Anyway, I want to welcome you all. I've got a great show lined up for us today. And, my name is Charlotte. I'm going to be your host for the next hour or so. I'm also the owner of the California Haunts Paranormal Investigation Team, based out of Sacramento, California. We are 45 strong up and down the state of California, which means if you have a paranormal need, we can get to you. It may take us some time. California is a huge state, to the point that, a lot of people, when they think of California, tighten this up, they think of beaches and bikinis and all that good stuff. Well, you know what? It is like that. But it's not all like that. Like Hawaii is like that. It's not all like that. People think it was like Hawaii. We also have deserts. We have high desert. We have mountains. We have a lot of farmland. And it's huge. It's a huge area. So even though we have people out, in these different areas, depending on your location, it might take us a little extra time to get out there. Okay? But don't distress, because we have psychics on staff, or mediums rather, who can phone you and talk to you about what may or may not be going on in your residence or business. And in the majority of the cases, they can calm down everything until we get out there. And honestly, do this. Don't you hate it when your cords do weird things? And honestly, we don't go more than 3 days, and we'll be out to see you. Okay, that being said, if you want to find us, you can find us on Facebook, either under California Haunts, or you can find it under my name. Or you can find us over at TikTok under California Haunts. On Twitter, we are California Haunts. On Twitch, we are Cal Haunts. On Instagram, it is Ghosty Gal, all lowercase, all one word. And on YouTube, it is youtube.com/@California Haunts Radio. And I usually do a lot in my little community page. You can reach me there or via email. All right, that being said, if you're watching tonight and you like what you see and hear, and you haven't done so already, and you're over on Facebook, feel free to hit that follow button. We're always looking for followers, if we're trying to build up our presence on the web. Because when you do that, and when you leave me happy faces and smileys and all that good stuff, it puts us higher in the FYP. And what that does is Facebook looks at that and says, oh, they're getting popular. Let's spread them out more. So then we get seen by more people. And that goes for your comments, too, during the show. YouTube, same thing. Same process. Show us some love. Do some commenting. And if you haven't done so already, if you like what you see, please subscribe. I've got more than 761 videos over YouTube. And they're all on different topics. I'm a journalist. I'm a photojournalist. And I like covering different things, not just, paranormal stuff. So I think you'll find something that you like. The other thing I've done over there is, because there's so many videos, I get over there and I'm trying to find certain guests that have been on the show previously, and I get a headache because it's just everywhere. So I'm categorizing everything in folders to make it easier to find. For instance, like this week, we're focusing on alien abductions and things like that. So that's in a folder for UFOs and alien abductions. Okay? You're interested in past history? We got a folder for that. Ghosts, hauntings? Got a folder for that. Nancy Matz? There's a folder for her. So you don't have to do what I call a dumpster dive to search for stuff. Okay? And the other thing I ask is, if you do go over there and check that out, and you find something that you think should be in a different category, let me know so I can change it. Okay? But that's what's going on the YouTube page. We're about to reinstate the radio website, because that's been going under some maintenance, and the California Haunts Paranormal Investigation Team website's coming back too. Just had to do maintenance and change things around a bit on those sites. But, yeah. All right. Okay, so tonight, my guest, we're going to call him Mr. Z, has had a unique life-changing experience. And I think he should tell you about that experience. Because, he knows the story a lot better than I do, and I think you're going to be interested by what he has to say. Also, he, I don't know how to describe this. He also has something else that he does, and so I'm going to let him tell you about that as well. And what the other thing that he does is wonderful, and it needs to be done. It's one of those things that has to be done, especially with children involved. So I think I'll let him tell you about that too. So without further ado, let me bring in Mr. Z.
How you doing?
Good. How are you?
Perfect, but it's getting better.
Tell me about you, sir.
I don't know what to say. There's a lot to say, I think. But generally, I run a large charity. It's called the Quest ECSS, or you can also find it endingchildsexslavery.org. We've saved over 2,700 kids so far since 2015. We're the best at what we do, and there's a reason for that, because we only have one law. It's called human law. And so we have a team of ex-military, military, and also contractors. And what we do is we do it military style. Plus, we got like 500 volunteers. Nobody in our organization has ever been paid, and we don't have a pay scale. Everything that we make and everything from my books that are sold go into our rescues. And the thing is that we're totally unlike anybody else. Once we get the kids, they're ours, and we work with other affiliate like orphanages and homes and things like that. And I know where every one of my kids is, everyone that we've rescued, everyone that we rescued that was dead. I know where all of them are. Anyway, we're very good at what we do, and we're so unique, in the sense that we stay with them right up until they're able to leave. We also provide 24-hour-a-day protection, because unlike a lot of these other organizations, the people who we take them from are very bad people. They're like triad Ukrainians and stuff, and they feel that it's their property, and so we have to protect them and prevent that from them being taken back. And what a lot of people don't understand is that these kids are kind of lost when they're taken into places they're not comfortable with, and so they'll just leave. So we don't have those issues. So anyway, that's what we do, and so on. And I also train contractors to become soldiers, to become warriors, basically, and understand the contracting business.
Very interesting. What got you into the child trafficking thing?
During my work, I came across it a couple times. I had no idea what it was all about. I didn't understand it. And one day I was in Cambodia on off time. It's kind of a place where I'd go and hang out, and sit along the street, and all the streets were dirt and stuff. And so I could just be alone, right? And in a sense, amongst a bunch of other people. And then I started to see things happen. And these guys would just be taken off with a little boy or something would come and take one of these guys off, foreigners, which was also unusual in the area that I was. And I got curious. So one day I followed one of them and ended up at a brothel, and outside of it, and this little boy approached me and he asked me if I want girl, and all this. And, I won't go into the gory details, but I got to witness what was taking place. And then the next day I know this priest sees me sitting across the street in the morning, drinking my coffee, smoking a cigar. And he thought of me as one of the Johns. And so when he came over, he had a few goons with him, and he approached me and he started talking to me. And, long story short, he found out who I was, and he was telling me he was going to do a rescue, and there was 14 girls in there. And he told me how he was going to do it. And I knew it was going to be a disaster, and he didn't have the skills, and he didn't understand how it works. And so I asked him if I could help him. And so I spent 3 days, training them and arranging what we would do. And we went and we hit the place, and then it was kind of funny. We had all but 2 girls, and the priest comes in where I told him he wasn't supposed to, but it was a good thing that he did. When he came in, he picked up one girl that was inside a wall. That was where they would hide. And there was another girl in the other room. He said, grab her. And so I went in there, and this little girl, like 4 years old, was in there. And so I grabbed her, and she's like scared of me, with all my garb on and everything. She's kind of fighting me. And I go through the makeshift doorway we made, and we get in this van, and we're traveling. I know it's a long distance, and there was no room to put her, so she had to stay on my lap. And as we were going, you know, I kind of took off my guard, but I went and look at her, and I just couldn't do that, you know, and because I didn't want to scare her anymore. And so along the ride, you know how you feel like when someone's staring at you, and
Right.
I had that feeling, and it was like, you know, don't look at her, don't look at her. And then I looked at her, and then when my eyes met her eyes, I just knew this is what I'm going to do. You know, this is what I'll be doing the rest of my life, and that's where it all began.
Well, it's a wonderful thing that you're doing to help these kids.
Yeah, it's I don't know, it's just something that I have to do. You know, and I on my side I put down how we do rescues and stuff,
Mm-hmm.
and which is different than what anybody else does. We work within the cultures because each
Mm-hmm.
place has a different culture, and there's, you know, just a lot of rules that we've created in order to maintain the environment and be successful at bringing them back. And every one of our girls gets healed. It's kind of odd because you don't hear that a lot, and you can't use therapists or anything like that. What we use
Mm-hmm.
is ex-slaves, and they go through a process. And by the time they're through that process, they're proud. They have a scar, and they know what that scar is, and they know what it means, and they're proud of it because they've overcome it, and they're
Mm-hmm.
full. They're wherever part of their life now is just love. So anyway, that's what we are.
So, just a couple more questions about that before we get to the other thing. When you got had, I know you don't want to tell your secrets, obviously, because you have ways of operating to do this stuff. But how do you get these kids out of there? I mean, obviously, do you have contacts over there that are helping you get to them?
Well, these 500 volunteers,
Mm-hmm.
and that's the other thing is we have all religions, all races. I mean, there's not a conflict within the group, right? Other than our team, we have to argue about how we're going to do things. But
Mm-hmm.
anyways, how it starts is they identify a place, and then once they identify the place, they set on it, and they view and they watch. They know the times and how many guards are there and what time it is and when their customers usually are likely to be there, and all the location details, the in and out and that sort of thing. And then once we decide to move on it, when we have the funds, what we'll do is we'll move on it. And that's when I get with my team and we start to discuss. And we all know each other very well. We know our skills. We know what we're good at. And we know what we're not good at. And so each of us finds that space where they'll be the one to do this or that, right? And
Right.
then once that's decided, then we decide how we're going to move on it and how long it's going to take. And usually it's between 5 and 7 minutes before we can get all the kids out and be
Mm-hmm.
gone. And then we take them to these safe houses because a lot of the kids are in such poor condition. We don't know if they would survive a trip that we would have to take them to the location that they're going to end up in. And so they're evaluated, they're washed, they're given new clothes, they're given an idea of what's going on. And sometimes we even have the money to get them a little toy, you know, to help comfort them in a sense. And then we get them to where they need to go. When we go in, you know, what we call it is we put the guards to sleep, and you know, which is true. And then we help them lose face in some manner. You know, sometimes strip them naked, duct tape them together, throw them out in the street or whatever, and that's what we leave. You know, there's been occasions when we found some very nefarious things within the building that we were in, and so we make sure that building no longer stands. And then once we get them to their destination, then all the process starts, the healing and them getting to know each other. And we also require certain things about the orphanage or the homes that they're in, you know, with
Mm-hmm.
no doors and things like that. But anyway, so, and we've had a lot of help from ex-slaves in that process.
Fantastic. I really admire what you do. I really do.
Thanks.
You're doing a great thing. Now, you had something happen in your life. You don't strike me, talking to you right now, you don't strike me as the kind of person that is going to lie about stuff like this. You seem really solid. And I don't mean to be, people that are crazy that are seeing UFOs and all this, but you just seem so solid and no nonsense with this stuff. Tell me about your chance encounter.
Well, what to start out with, it's kind of funny how it all came to be, right? I'm running a charity, right? And,
Mm-hmm.
I'm the guy who founded it, and I'm the guy that operates it. I'm the one that does the rescues, the whole bit. And I have this experience, right? And so I have to, I go, yeah, that's really going to look good, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, this guy, he runs a charity and he sees aliens, right? And so, it wasn't really in my thought, but my friends kept asking me questions about this because I've had a history of different things on the spiritual side. I'm a Shaolin priest and abbot. And
Mm-hmm.
so, um, anyway, I decided just to write a book because they were asking me so many questions, and it was same questions over and over again
Mm-hmm.
and that sort of thing. So I just decided, well, I'll just write a book and I'll throw it up there on Amazon, and hopefully that'll help. And it did. They were able to ask better questions and things like that. But then suddenly other people started buying it, and other
Mm-hmm.
people started reading it, and that's how that kicked off. But what happened is once a week or so, I go down to the Glades, and there's this place that about 100 miles from anything that we train these contractors. And anyways, I'm a part of that, and it's in the swamps, right? And it's middle of nowhere, like I said, unless you're ocean bound,
Right.
and we do that too. But anyway, I decided to go for a walk, and I like to walking through the swamp. A lot of people wouldn't like that, but something about it just attracts me. Not just the smells, but the animals and things like that you
Mm-hmm.
see there, and then knowing your way around, you know how to be safe and stuff. And there's so many different types of creatures, and it's really beautiful. And so, anyways, I went for my walk. I was going down a game trail, and all of a sudden, I get to this area where I see over by these mangroves, which a lot of people don't know what mangroves are, but they're like the roots are out of the ground in a sense, and they grow outward, and
Mm-hmm.
everything around it is what we call the suck, because if you step in it, you just sink down to your knee, and. And anyways, I saw this lady there in a blue like jumpsuit and blonde hair, very beautiful, and she was hung up in the mangroves, which is not unusual for a person, but for somebody like this to be out in the middle of absolutely nowhere and wearing like a blue suit, it just nothing fit. But I figured maybe I was just smelling something in that was making my mind go a little different or something. But I decided, well, just like I would an animal, I would go up and try to free it, and then
Mm-hmm.
be very cautious and calm with it. And so I made my way over to her, and I'm still kind of in shock what's going on. And I said, well, I'll just play it out whether it's real or not. And what happened is we weren't really communicating with verbally, but I got closer to her, and I sat down and I had a smoke, and I wanted her to get used to me sitting there, being in close to her, and knowing that I wasn't going to do her harm.
Mm-hmm.
And then I pulled out my knife because I needed to cut some of the stuff away from her legs. And she kind of jumped back a little bit. And so, I kind of stopped and slowed my roll a little bit, and set the knife near her so she could pick it up. And so she picked it up, and I was kind of motioning to her, don't touch this part, and cut and stuff like that. And so it seemed to go on okay. And she kept watching me very closely. And then I noticed she had these really big eyes, very blue and very large. And so I just kind of thought, well, yeah, that's part of this thing that's happening to me or whatever. And so she set the knife back down, and then I picked it up, and I was real slow, and I got her out. And then once she was out, I kind of helped her. And when I touched her arm where the suit was, it almost felt like I was touching skin, which was kind of odd to me. And so once she got out, I could tell she wasn't walking well. And I think there was a trust that started there because of what I had done. And so I motioned to her that I would pick her up, and I could take her where she wanted to go. And she slowly but allowed me to do that. And it was kind of interesting, she was about 5'10", I guess. And she looked, maybe wet, 100 pounds or 110 pounds. So when I went to pick her up, I almost threw her over my head because she was so light. And they had the ability to do that, I guess, somehow. And so anyways, I had her, and she kept guiding me. And we got to a certain point where there's this big mound. And I wasn't familiar at the time in Florida what the mounds were all about and all that, but it was, anyway, we got to this mound, and it was kind of cleared from any brush or anything. And so she motioned for me to put her down. And then she was like motioning for me to get back. And then the next thing I know, I see her like put her hands together like this. And as I stood back, I looked up and I could see like a blue light come down and she was gone. And I thought, wow, that was interesting. I'll have something to talk about in my dreams tonight. And then I guess it was, another time I was going out there. And when I was going on my hike, I was not intending to go back to that mound, but something kind of drew me there. And so I made my way over around there and I kind of was looking around. I saw some panther tracks and stuff. And I thought, well, that's pretty interesting. Next thing I know, there's this blue light coming down and I'm on the ship. And once I was on the ship, there was like 6 of them standing there. And I felt, well, maybe this is where I get eaten or something, or they do other things to me. But they all looked like us, right? Except for the very large eyes. And all of them were very tall, except for Sam Jess. Anyways, I'm kind of looking at them one by one, and it didn't look like I was very welcome there. And I get down to the end where Sam Jess was, and she's standing there waving and smiling. And I thought, okay, I'll go along with this and see where it leads. And that was the very beginning. That's where we started to communicate back and forth, and many things took place.
How many times were you taken aboard the ship?
What was that?
Excuse me. How many times were you taken aboard the ship?
Well, I still do. It's been about a little over a year and a half now, and I frequent them. They became my family.
What is the ship like?
I call it an RV. The first ship was considered a lab ship, and it was large, but I kind of named the areas like living room and kitchen and stuff because it's kind of set up similar to like that, but there's a metallic look to it, and the bottom is soft where you stand and all that, and it's I felt it, and I don't know what kind of material it is or anything, but it's some sort of metals, which I found out later what it was, but anyways, it was really interesting, and there was like no windows but there's a way to do that, and they touch the wall. And when they touch the wall, a window will appear, where you can see through. And then there's this like glass, but it doesn't look like glass, and it's very, very hard. So it's almost, they can make the whole front of the ship disappear, which was what happened one time. And it's like you're standing on the edge of the ship. It's still there, but you don't see it, but you have a great view of whatever you're in front of.
Very interesting. Question in the chat room is, what race are they?
They call themselves the Plejaren,
okay.
Which they're not Palladians. So from what I understand, there is nobody there in the Plejaren or Palladian area, because I don't know. There's a lot of things that go on beyond that, but it's beyond that. When people ask me where it is, well, you go to the Pallades and then go another 80 light years and you're there.
Oh, cool. Oh, cool. You talk about the first ship being like a lab ship. So did they do any kind of tests on you or anything?
Not really. It's not like that. What it was we sat down and we had communications and, trying to learn each other's language and stuff. And it was kind of interesting to me because the lady who I had picked up, her name is Sam Jess. And they're all kind of misfits, but they were doing their work. And my interaction with them was that where we would talk about certain things. And I would say something so simple like a man walking down the street without a shirt. Well, 16 hours later, they're on the edge of their seat asking me more questions. And what I realized was that they see things from so many different points of view, so that once they've learned it, they can know it when they're experiencing it. But it was getting very frustrating for me, and because it was like same subject for so long a period of time. And then I went away for a little while, for I don't know, a week or two. And they came after me. They showed up in my apartment, and they're like, where you been and stuff. And I says, well, I had to, figure stuff out. And so I have a very small apartment and stuff, and my bed's basically like my chair. And so I was had a show on a sitcom, and so I had her sit down there, and we're watching this, and then we watch it, all the way through. And I got an idea because she was asking me so many questions about what was taking place. So I showed it again and again. And after about the third time, she goes, "Why do you keep showing me the same thing?" I said, "Now you know what it's like for me when I'm on the ship trying to explain something to you." And what that did was it broke a big barrier where I would have some certain films I'd show them about family, about people, and how the relationships are and all. And then they had good questions, and we advanced from there. And it just kept continuing.
When you say they're tall, how tall are they?
Well, Sam Jess is the short one. She's like 5'10", and the rest of them are good 7 foot.
Wow.
And they're all perfect.
Really? Question in the chat room. Are they helping mankind, or are they observing it?
Well, that's a really big question. And that leads to like contact and stuff. It basically, as far as them, they were more of a lab ship. They just study things and track certain things and how, and I could go into that for hours, but they weren't to be really the people who contact. But a lot of things took place, which I put in my books. I wrote 5 books in less than a year, and about all the stuff that I was learning. And essentially, you know, yeah, there's no contact to us. There are different species that are here with certain government agencies, but it's more of a distraction because it's like, you know, the way they explained it to me, and that I kind of assumed anyway, is they give us a gift of something, right? We'll find a way to keep that or try to make money from it or something like that, or create war problems. We're not ready for that sort of consciousness. So what they have done is like their plan of contact is where first thing is don't believe anything the government's telling you about this stuff because it's so far wrong. But anyways, they find very young people. Like I keep begging to be a contactee so I can learn all their tricks and stuff. And of course, I'm denied. I'm too old, they say. And so they target these small children and they teach them the different things about love, in a sense, because that's the activator. And the idea is that they cannot be teachers. They cannot be anything but themselves, but they just apply who they are, which is they've magnified by allowing them to see that our abilities are so much greater than what we perceive them to be. And positive attracts, negative repels. So it'll be kind of like the 100th monkey thing, as people see and bear witness to the things that they do. Like there was a video on YouTube where one of these little girls in China was walking along with all these dead flowers. As she passed them, they came to life, and nobody could quite understand what was taking place. And it's because like we've evolved to a point where physically we're not going to evolve anymore. You know, not for the most part. There's so much information I could be giving you, but essentially what it is that what was missing in us is like we see things as magic when we see someone levitating or doing something, you know, walking through a wall or something like that, and we can't figure this out. Well, we see that as magic, where the reality of that is that we have all this space left in our brain. We used our whole brain, but there's also a large area like memories. Memories keep piling up till we die, right? Well, it's about unconditional love, those things within your life that's of love. So we need to fill all those files and all those spaces with love, unconditional type love. And that's what activates our true abilities to go beyond what we are, because the brain is just an organ. The mind is something that is more spiritual, and it is the one thing that activates the rest of us by filling our minds with love.
I read some, I was doing some research on your stories and stuff. You said initially when you saw them the second time that they were kind of, I don't know if the word is the right word, shocked, or they were fascinated because you had helped her.
Yes, because their perception, because they weren't, you know, the part of the Plejaren society or species that do actual contact, make physical contact with us. And so they were kind of a lab, and their stories are, you know, humans were violent. basically like we're running around monsters or animals, how we would fear, a tiger or a lion in the open, right? And so that's why and when I first went on the ship, only Sam Jess was happy to see me, and the others were very hesitant and awkward about having, a contact with me. And what they discovered is that, I may not be what they thought I was, or maybe I'm unique. They didn't know, and they still don't quite know, but it was that engagement that we had over a period of time that they started to understand. And one thing that I learned was that when I go on the ship, right from the beginning, I was challenged very heavily, and that was in the respect to you had to be completely open. I call it being naked, right? There is nothing that you can hide. You can't lie to these people. You can't mislead them. You can't even do like a little white lie to avoid, telling them something, this or that. And so it was a constant challenge because I wanted to be with them and I understood this about them. And so I started to develop, that ability that when I got on the ship, it was like flipping a switch, because here on Earth, we have to have a different face for every person that we meet. In order to have a communication, and there's certain ways we are, appropriately act in certain situations where when I'm with them, I just have to be completely open. There was a time when I got on the ship, and there's like a scan that anytime anything enters into the ship, that it analyzes, like if there's a bacteria or something that could be harmful to them. They don't keep it entirely pure because that wouldn't be healthy, but they do remove anything that might be, bad for them. And so they witnessed all these scars, and like I got 9 bullet holes and been cut so many times, and they saw all this stuff on me and they wanted to ask me about it. And it's like, oh God, this is my last day on the ship, because I'm going to prove to them that I am the monster that they believe, right? And I had to explain to them that some people, put themselves in harm's way, for others that can't do it for themselves. And so, I showed them a movie and everything. And after it was over, it was kind of interesting because Sam Jess took me to her room and we got in her bed, and there's like this thing that they don't have like screens or anything, but something similar. Anyways, it's beyond words, I guess. But anyways, we watched this movie and I thought it was just me and her. And then I could hear other people making noise out in the rest of the place because they were watching it too. And I thought, oh, great, this is my last day on the ship. But, it's been a fun ride once they find or know about all this stuff, And I was really surprised because when I came out eventually, because Sam Jess left and they were all out in the other room, and I was drinking my coffee that I've taught them to make for me. And I make my way out there, and it was completely different. It was very emotional. And I've done speeches before on many occasions where preachers will come up, like a whole group of them, and lay hands on me, for the work that I'm doing and stuff and what I have to go through. And it was similar to that, except for when they put their hands on me, I just fell to my knee. I felt like I was like there was a ton on the top of me, and it just flushed everything out of me. And I felt this incredible love towards these people, and they accepted me. And that's the way it worked. Every time I was challenged, I was very nervous about not being able to be accepted there anymore, but I'd get through it. And so I wrote about all that as a diary, as I went through all these processes and the things that I've learned.
Now, they told you that you were old. Did you ever find out how old they were?
Yeah. Sam Jess is very young. She's 263 years old. And they live to be about a little over 800 to 1,000. And what happens to them is that they're not that much different than us. They have a smaller stomach, smaller intestine. They also excrete a lot of their waste through their skin. Although I've never seen it, felt it, or touched it, that I can smell nothing. So I don't know how that really works. But as they get older, they begin to grow again. And when they begin to grow again, their organs don't. And so they end up, their body fails them and they move on, which I learned a lot about death too with them.
Can you tell us a little bit about that?
you know, we never die, and there's a lot to that. I'll try to keep it short. Essentially, like there's this, you gotta kick in the imagination because it's all beyond words, and it took me a long time to try to figure out how to explain this that would be understandable. But there's like out in the middle of space, imagine this great big puzzle board, right? And it's all one solid color, and there's all these different pieces, right? And then you got like this dude, a big guy sitting on a lazy boy watching a bunch of TVs in front of him, right? And he's sitting on top of this puzzle board, which is consciousness or source or God or whatever you want to call it. And each of those fragments is us, and it's a life, right? And that life, it has like a TV series, right? It never leaves source. It's a projection. So that's why like time and doesn't exist. The material world doesn't really exist, but we are a projection. And each one of those TVs that consciousness is sitting there watching is a life, or one of our past lives, or present life, or a future life. They're all taking place at the same moment, the same fraction of time, or if that even exists. But when that series is over, and the person feels a physical death, that's when that projection ends. And so now that source that fragment or soul is now back with the rest of the consciousness as the whole. And then, speeding really far ahead, as far as death goes, there was this moment where me and Sam Jess were experiencing these certain things from on another place. We call it traveling. In other words, we move, like a lot of people would call like astral traveling, for example, but it's far more than that. But anyways, we were on a planet, and we were in this place where there was a lot of visuals and things that we witnessed. And then her mother, who was dead, showed up, and you would have swore she was alive. And she was speaking to us, and an interchange took place, and it was as though we were all in the present. And the way Sam Jess explained that to me was that upon death, we're like a file, right, up on consciousness. And each time we have a life, it creates a file, which is a living entity within itself. And so, like, it's like when we speak out, right, to contact somebody who's passed on, and we hear them and experience them, they're alive, even though that their fragment has probably moved on to another life, right, or is involved with other lives. So it just is a separate entity within itself in the consciousness. And that's like when I see like these ghost shows, and like, they're contacting somebody from the past. Well, when they're doing that, they're actually contacting somebody in the present that's still in the past, what they would perceive as the past. And it gets kind of confusing because there isn't any time. It's kind of like Einstein, when he was asked what is time, he pointed to the clock on the wall. So all of this is happening, all of our lives, all these things that we perceive is a projection that is happening at an instant.
Very
and it never ends.
Very interesting. Question in the chat room. Are they able to cure diseases and stuff?
Yeah, there was a moment it was kind of interesting because they can't share these things with us until we reach a certain consciousness, which they estimate 40 to 50, 60 years, whenever, because, with the 100 monkey thing. And I had 20% use of my arm because of an accident that I had. And they wanted me to understand and see something that they had, but they wouldn't completely fix it, but they would mend it for me. This is what they said. And just so that I could have the experience. And so there's like a table, a lot of people would call it like a med bed, but it's far from that. And when I laid on there, they showed me this light, and how this light would be able to detect the problem that I had, which was a ligament or whatever that was connected. Had been torn. And what they did was, it felt like somebody, you didn't see anything happening. You just saw there was a light there, a small light, and it was like a light blue and stuff. And it felt like somebody touched my arm, right, with their finger. And that was about it. And they like moved it around a little bit. And this was all in a matter of seconds. And then when they finished, I was able to do everything that I could before with my arm. So they didn't completely heal it, but they just mended a little bit so that I could be equalized again.
Absolutely. That's pretty cool,
But
though.
but there's so many other things that goes far beyond that type of healing. But
Very interesting.
then you're talking about quantum, because everything in this life is in the quantum, and it's explainable by the quantum. If you read the Bible, it is the quantum. It's interesting anyway, and they've showed me so many different things like that.
Do they? How much do they look like us? For being tall.
Well, I've brought them here. I write about all this in my book too, and it was very comical in a lot of ways. But let's just say that for physically, they're perfect, right? I mean, they just walked like they walked out of a modeling page or something. Every one of them, no matter their age and stuff. And like Hans is one of the guys there that's taught me a lot about energy and stuff, and showed me things on the colonies and everything, how they grow their food, how it all works. But he's like, I call him Hans because like I've named them because I don't know their language and I can't begin to pronounce the things that they do. But him, and there's his buddy that works with him, I call him Franz, like Hans and Franz, the old Saturday Night Live thing, even though they're not anything like that, right? But their appearance, it's just they're big and they're perfect. And anyways, he looks like the perfect surfer dude, that's what I would depict him as if I saw him on Earth. But anyway, I brought Sam Jess down here, and the thing that I had to be aware of was her eyes, because the eyes do stand out if people are paying attention. And so developed these gargoyle type sunglasses, and they've modified them since then, and you wouldn't know. And it was funny because we're going around the mall, and that's the other thing, is the female gene is alive and well throughout the universe, because as soon as we got into the mall, she gravitated to the clothes store. And because she did a lot of work, it was kind of funny too, she did a lot of work in order to prepare for that. And when she came, she didn't look acceptable, right? Anyway, and so I had to help her with the outfit and everything, but to make her blend in. But as we're walking around, a lot of stuff happened, but we go, and she kept noticing women with like earrings, and she was very attracted to that. And so she wanted an earring, and there was a place there that wanted, it was like $20 they give you a free earring or piercing or whatever. And so, I asked her, is that okay? This is how it works, and so on and so forth. And she said yes. And so when she had her glasses on, her sunglasses, and when she got in there, the lady had her sit down and asked her to remove her sunglasses. And I says, oh no, the doctor said, that she needs to keep those on. She just had her eyes dilated and stuff. And she goes, oh, okay, no problem. And then she pulls her hair back, and she's not noticing the difference in the hair, but because it feels the same. And she notices the ears is quite different. It's like taller and thinner and all that. And she goes, she goes, that's a different looking kind of ear. And I said, yeah, she's Norwegian, and fully Norwegian. And she goes, oh, it's been a long time since I had a Viking here. So we got through it, right? That's how passable they are. And then there was other time I took her to like a Halloween party, which was really funny. And then I brought the whole family down on the 4th of July here in my hometown, and was able to doctor them up in order for them to pass. And nobody knew the difference. And the funny thing is that people don't realize they're all here. They're all among us. And if you just really pay attention, you'll notice differences, just subtle differences.
That's been my thought, with eventually, seeing them and being in contact with them, which is what's going to happen, like you say, 40 or 50 years. But my thought is we may not, because like you say, to see them, like they could be your next door neighbor or living across the street from you, and you wouldn't know it.
Yeah.
Until that point where they decide to come out, to come out with the truth, and all of a sudden your neighbor comes across the street and goes, "Oh, by the way, I'm from Mars or whatever," and I think it's all very interesting.
Well, I met a couple of people, I call them Vulcans, because they reminded me of that look. They had a narrow chin and everything. They didn't have pointed ears or anything, but that's what I tend to do, is because I have English is my second language. I don't have a first language, so I struggle through it. And so anyways, it makes it easier for me, actually to tell the story and everything else. But anyways, I met this couple, and they had lived here for 6 years. on Earth. And it was because they're not near as advanced as what the Plejarens are, but they're like 2,000 years advanced from us. And they wanted to see what it was like, you know, on their planet, because it was so similar. And they wanted to be here to experience that. And they lived among us, they worked among us. And I kidded them too. I asked them if they had ever seen Star Trek, and they said, yeah. I said, was it a comedy or a drama to you? And they just laughed and said it was kind of both. but uh, but that's how, I mean, we're that close to people.
Well, you were talking about her description, and in fact, I was thinking about Star Trek. Maybe we're on the same, you know, wavelength.
Yeah.
When Kirk and Spock go to like the 1930s,
Yeah.
and they get stopped by the cop, and he has to explain to the cop why Spock has the eyebrows and the pointy ears. That's what that reminds me of.
It is. You know, it's kind of a comedy, and like I say, I'm not here to you know, argue anybody else's point of view. This is my experience,
right?
And so I write my experience and how I feel, and a lot of it is very comical. But the things that I've learned about them and I've shared in these books, people call them nuggets, right? You know, like sense and stuff like that. And I do explain those certain things that, you know, helps change us into what they call natural law, but what the kids will be showing us, you know, as we grow up.
Right. Now, my other question I was thinking is, you obviously showed her what we eat, you know, and all that stuff. Do they eat?
Yeah, that's another big subject that they've showed me. Almost anywhere you go with these people, there's like the place you touch on the wall, and you know, I'm kind of handicapped that way because I can't figure it out, and you know, they sense it or whatever. And anyway, so they put a place up where it's, you know, they got my menu. So my foods, right? I can create, but also what they eat is this is really interesting. It's like little gray balls. They're not appetizing to look at all, you know. And when they get them, they can have, there's different flavors and sort of stuff like that. So like if I got a steak, right? I ordered steak on there in one of the gray balls, and it looks like a gray ball, and then I put it in my mouth. Suddenly I feel the juices, I feel the texture. It's just like I'm eating a piece of steak. But the thing is with their food, it gives you so much energy, and that's why they don't eat a whole lot. But there was a time when we went to a place where I was with one of the girls, and she took me. She was just giving me a tour in a sense, where she took me to this place, a restaurant, because they don't have a monetary system, and but people still like to do certain things a certain way and provide that for people. And so this one guy was very like a chef, right? He just enjoyed creating meals for people that was realistic to what they knew, you know, whatever species they may know. And so we go in there, and you know, they go, what do you want? And I said steak and lobster, right? And that's what they were creating. And so I had a question, because the lady I was with, she had these like boots on that kind of looked like moccasins. I said, is that skin? And she said, yes. And I says, well, how do you get that? I mean, you know, do you kill animals and things like that? And she says, no, they grow it. And so they can grow different portions of whatever material that they need. And it's the real thing, but it's not conscious. And it's not the whole thing, it's the part that they need. Where like my lobster tail that came out, you could not tell the difference between it being created or if it was actually part of a lobster. And it tastes the same, everything. They grow it, and it's very quick. It's almost instant. And the same with like the steak, the same way. So you have an option to have meals like that, or to have them in these little gray balls. So, and they showed me how that all works too.
That's just absolutely incredible. It's fascinating and incredible. Absolutely incredible.
Well, I know one thing. A lot of people. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
A lot of people ask me about this, and you know, I'm jumping all through. There's a lot of material, you know, in my books, but one of the things I found really interesting is like when people have all these ideas of how they travel, how they move light years in an instant, and things like that. Well, there was a time when they have these, like I call them they're like a tic tac, like a real tic tac, but they're large, right? 6-8 feet long. And I had this experience with Sam Jess, where I got to go for a ride. I won a bet, and I got to go for a ride. And then I got to do my own. So now I'm an astronaut. At least I tell people that. That's my story. And the interesting thing is that I was watching her move her hands all over the place, but there's no instruments, there's no nothing, right? And things would take place. And so when it was my turn, what they did was they put in like a light panel, which kind of represented, like a handle, a joystick and everything. And it was interesting because you couldn't feel it, but I could put my hand on it and I'd make the motion, it would move with my motion. And so I learned what it was like to move in the ship. And then eventually we got to a point where they wanted me to go out solo and all this and with no instruments. And what they told me to do was I learned all the motions from the way I was doing it. Also, you'll see around these ships and stuff like a little blurry area. And, I always called it like plasma. But what it is it's an intelligent being. It's an energy that's intelligent. And basically your frequency is your passport to the galaxy or the universe, whatever you want to call it. And so when I got in there, it mapped my frequency. And so I can't make a mistake, right? And it's going to act as I do on it. Like if I wanted, I call it jump, right? If I wanted to jump, I would hit a button, right? And I'd announce like Mars, boom, I was there, right? In the proximity of it. I'm making the story short, but like when you jump, you really don't go anywhere. They don't use wormholes or anything like that. What it is like when we're in the big ship, it has this personal intelligence. That's what I call it, PI, where it locates a frequency, and they want to go to a certain place, right? And how they do that is they don't have computers, but let's say computer will tell them the exact frequencies that are necessary and required for them to be in another place. So wherever that place is, they map it with frequency. Then their ship becomes that frequency and they're there. So they really never went anywhere. And that's how they pick me up, because each of us has a unique frequency. And so when I want to go on a ship or they want to get with me, they map my frequency. And then when I enter the blue light, which isn't necessary, but I told them I want the blue light because it's cool, right? And so when I enter that blue light, my frequency, I go from here to the ship. And it's all that. So I don't go anywhere. I'm just changing my surroundings in a sense. Anyway, I thought that. Go ahead.
That is really cool. And speaking of the blue light, I'm thinking of some of the people that have come in contact with Sasquatch. I don't know if they told you about that, if Sasquatch is something that they created or whatever. But there have been cases with Sasquatch encounters where people have seen him disappear or come out of blue light.
I've heard that too. The thing is, I don't really ask questions, but it's kind of funny. I can usually answer things because of what they've showed me. I kind of know the answers to a lot of different things. And one of the big things was our evolution. It's quite different than what the Darwin type idea is. In a sense, the way to explain it, again, it's beyond words, but when this planet was seeded, and they were a part of that, the Plejarens, it's like a tree, right, with leaves on it. And when one of those leaves falls, it's a species, right? And it takes off running and goes for a while until it doesn't exist anymore. Or, the idea is to find a species that actually can last. Well, one of the funny things that happen is there's many of them, and they live at the same time. So you have bi-species existing at the same time. And here's kind of an interesting note on that. Like, I was fascinated by these elongated skulls. And so they were happy to show me and take me and show me these different things, where you'll notice that, like that little crack or whatever that's in people's skulls and stuff. Well, if you look at those elongated skulls, they always seem to be quite different from one to the other, yet they still have the same shape. And that's, the different plates that they're on, or like continents or whatever you want to call it, that they were on. And they were a winged being. And they existed prior to our species and then with our species. And they were very intelligent. And when this species that we are now was going along and making our way, and we were still very young, so to speak. You know, I asked the question about like the pyramids and how those were built, and how like I can't think of the name. It's near Lake Titicaca in Bolivia. Those were like Lego blocks that came together that had that magnetite within it and things.
Yes.
And she said it's very simple. And she explained to me like those aren't rocks; they're poured. That's why they're so perfect. And they had forms, and they created those things in place. And these beings taught us, who were very, you know, not well evolved yet, how to do these sort of things. The same thing took place there, and they showed me all these different things that I couldn't deny. And so that's one of the ways that we have evolved to the point that we are now. And that's where the question comes in, well, why aren't they helping us? Are they going to save us if it comes to that? Well, no, because there is no life or death. And that if we can't evolve, if we can't create a consciousness ourselves that will survive or surpass what we're in now, then we're, you know, why would they want to save us, right?
Right. Do they look at us as being still primitive here? I mean, compared to what they have?
They don't have they don't see things that way. They see things as species, and they're how they're doing, you know, how they migrate and all those things. Kind of like watching insects. That's the other thing it brings up too that a lot of people are interested. You know, like there's this thing called natural law, and it's obeyed throughout the universe, and so there's no real conflict that I know of. And from what they told me, there is none. And I've also met other species that don't communicate well, and I understood why. But the bug people, what I call the bug people, the ones that don't look human, because that's the other thing is the people that I'm around are surrounded with are a lot of different species. They have different looks to them, but they're humanoid, right? And so they're able to work together well because they think, they have emotion, and they do things quite similar. And where the bug people, they don't really have an emotion, but they understand natural law. So there's no conflict, and they do act a lot like insects from what I've seen. And they are kind of scary looking, right? If you would see them, you'd kind of freak out probably, but there's no harm there. For instance, like they know how to harvest well, like a planet or whatever, but they won't do any damage to it, and they won't do anything that would cause it to lose its natural state, you know, orbit or anything else. But then they take all of what they need, and then they share it with the humanoid type people too. But there's no real communication. Now there was a group of people that I met, and I've actually met 3 of them so far personally. But they wanted to meet me, and they were friends with the Plejarens, especially Sam Jess. And this is kind of cool too, is they created a room for us, but they could make it throughout the entire ship. And Sam just showed me on like a digital thing so I could see it, where it creates an environment around the being. And wherever they go, that environment stays with them. So we don't have to be in a place where, you know, we have to wear apparatus or anything. And anyways, I'm speaking to them, and I called them grays because I didn't know other name for them because of the way they looked, you know, as with typical gray look. But there's also so many species that look like that. So, you know, they just accepted my identification as gray. And but they don't really have an emotion that we can understand. And so as we spoke with each other, they explained this to me. And I guess they're like millions of years old. And so as we're communicating, it was awkward, but I understood. And like they said, they made contact with the Plejarens, but they don't really do the contact work with people like us any longer because of the fact that they come off differently and we can't understand. And I totally get it.
When you talk about the contact, did you ask them how long they've been coming?
Well, the Plejarens are around 5,000 years advanced to us in relation, you know, 4 to 5. And so they've been here and before and now, but so has many species. But it's non-interference for the most part because they understand the natural law and how that works.
This has been so fascinating. Absolutely fascinating. What do you appreciate the best about them?
Love. They've taught me so much, and my friends and stuff have said how much I've changed in a lot of ways.
Mm-hmm.
But like hugging, I wasn't a very good hugger, so to speak, right? And there was a friend of mine, a male, that taught me to hug in a way, and that was very awkward for me because I didn't hug guys. And so now that's just part of my life. When I go to the ship, that's what you do. It's like, at first it's like, oh God, here I go. Here it goes in 20 minutes, an hour, whatever. I have to go around and hug every one of them. But the thing is that when you hug them, it's something different. In a lot of ways, you feel something like you're merging with that person. It's like you're catching up on the love that you had for them before to what it's evolved to now. And and you just have to, every one of them requires it. It's like, oh God, I want to go play, but it's worth it, and it's addictive. So yeah, there's a lot. That's what the biggest thing is about how they love. And in natural law, when they're born, they don't have to be educated. They don't have to be sent to anywhere in particular in order to learn specific things. They're not guided to learn certain things. But it is that it's a long process, and they don't carry pregnancy. Sex isn't really a thing, but that's a whole nother story. But essentially, once they're born, or brought into life in the outer world, they are given like toys and things, and they'll gravitate to certain things that they like. This is natural law, and natural law guides them, and they just keep feeding that to the kid more and more and more higher, smarter things and toys, and they develop a thing. So like here on Earth, we're programmed. Oh, this is a good, way to be. You need to learn how to do this or that, and we're guided to that. But then those jobs go away, and we get advancements, and that thing no longer exists. So we have to retrain. But in their way, natural law, when they're following their heart and what they enjoy, they gravitate to what's coming, and then there is no shortage of people. They don't get paid or anything. This is their joy, and they work all the time, and they love it. And if you try to identify their job, it's kind of like, well, I can identify the source, but it grows and expands in so many directions. But
the question is about this also is, are they hybrids with us?
no, it's not necessary.
Okay.
Because like they showed us, and like our scientists can tell you this too. You can go to any game trail or anywhere around and take a sample of the soil and have 40 types of different DNA. Then they can take that DNA and do anything that they want with it. And it's not necessary.
Okay. What messages do they have for us, if any?
They really don't.
Okay. That's kind of good. It's good.
They have hope for us, that's for sure. And part of like keeping me around and showing me these things, they also show me a lot of the little special things like sensing and things like that you can apply. Because the thing is like, it was kind of funny when they're explaining all these different things to me that they said how much more we are, and we have no idea what our potential is and what we can do. And I explained, I said, well, there was a character here on Earth that said something similar. It was Jesus. And after he healed a bunch of people, he made an announcement, you, the people of this earth, can do all that I can do and more. And they like that, and it's absolutely true. And that's their hope for us,
Absolutely. Mr. Z, thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely.
I learned so much. Oh my gosh, this is wonderful. I would love to have you back on again to talk more about this. I mean, this is really cool.
Yeah, anytime.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, and Plejaren Diaries, that's my books. And you always want to start with the first book because it is a diary. So you'll get lost if you kind of skip forward in the books. But I also have a YouTube channel, and it's called Plejaren Diaries, which has a lot of information. So anyways, they'll be able to find me through all that.
Okay, fair enough. Thank you so much. I think I'm going to be in touch with you to get you back on. Okay?
Yeah, thank you.
I would love to talk to you more. All right, sir. You have a great rest of your evening.
All right, bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Okay, boy, that was fascinating. Absolutely fascinating. I could sit and pick his brain all day. No question about that. Tomorrow, Nancy Matz is here, and she's going to be talking. We're still on this subject of UFO UAPs, and she's going to be talking about how you can sense the time when to look up to see these things. So she's going to be talking about that tomorrow. That should be very, very, very interesting. I'm tired today. My allergies are really bad. I want to thank you all for coming tonight. I really appreciate it. I think I've got his contact information here. He's got like 3 websites. I didn't get everything uploaded in here. Like I said, Mercury has really been wreaking havoc with me. So if I click on this thing and it doesn't show the websites and stuff, you'll know why. But I want to thank you all for coming, and I will see you guys tomorrow, 6:30 p.m. Pacific, with me, Nancy Matz, and we're still going to be talking about UFOs and UAPs. So let's see if I got his information here. Nope, that's the book. Plejaren Diaries. Okay, well, let me see what I can do here before we take off. See if I can find it. Hang on a second. So I can get you guys the info. Let's see. Yeah, there we go. So I can talk for a couple more minutes. I find this stuff to be really fascinating, especially his story in particular. You know, because it's like nothing you've. I mean, we've heard these happier stories, you know, for dealing with extraterrestrials, but we never heard it from like his perspective. You know, where they were very open with him to talk to him about it. So that was rather interesting. All right, let's see what we got. Here we go. Websites, facebook.com/Zaysan, ZAYSAN.ZEYSAN. YouTube.com/@. Well, that was quick, huh? Plejaren. Okay. See, it's one of those days, I told you. And there's the book. Okay, book available on Amazon. Let me run the websites one more time. It's been like this for 2 days. Okay, let me run the website again. Okay, and facebook.com/TheQuest ECSS and thequestecss.org. Okay, I think we got it. Finally. All right, I will see you guys tomorrow at 6:30 p.m. Pacific. Have a great evening, and yeah, bye.